Alright, so we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 measurements. Okay? So once again, length of car, body, height of car body, distance from back of car to rear axle, and distance from back of car to front axle. Okay, 4 dimensions. All right, let me start with this one here. This is the easy one. Okay, watch this, folks. Take a look. I'm going to put my triangle like this, and here's what I want you to take a close look at. Even though we don't have anything up here yet, I'm going to make sure that my triangle lines up with the back of my car body and lines up here with the top. And when I make this line, it's not going to touch the car. Okay? I'm going to zoom in pretty close so you can see what I'm getting ready to do. Alright? I'm going to draw a line here that stops about a half a grid space away from this dashed outline of the car body. I'm going to come up maybe just a few blocks. I'm going to stop right there. Okay, so take a look. Okay, I know and you know that the car itself is here. I know that, you know that, but we're just going to try not to have this line interfere with this dashed line. So we're going to fall about a half a grid short of that corner. Okay, that's a nice vertical line, right? Now, here's a little something you learned weeks ago when we completed that line worksheet. I'm now going to take my triangle, watch this, I'm going to slide it all the way to the front of my car. And for many of you like me, where the front airfoil ends is where the front of your car ends. Some of you are just like that. Okay, if this is the front of your car, okay, that's where you should have this tool. Now, remember this. I want to draw a perfectly vertical line. So here's a little trick. I can line up my tool here, but do you see this black line on your paper? You see this big black line right here? Use this black line as a reference. Take your triangle and place it right on that black line. Slide your triangle up to the front of your car. And as long as you have this triangle lined up here, I should be able to draw a perfectly vertical line here. Okay? So use this black line along what we call your title block to keep your triangle nice and straight. Now remember, I don't touch the drawing. And I'm going to extend this line up, and I should fall roughly along the same plane as where this line ends. So these two lines here should be roughly on the same plane. They're endpoints. Now let me zoom in right here so we can take a look. Okay, so remember, we never touch the object lines. Your dimension line should fall a little short. Okay, fall a little short from the object. Now, we've done this before. I'm now going to take my triangle, and ladies and gentlemen, what's the longest part of a triangle? What do we call this side? A hypotenuse. Very good. If you take a triangle and kind of hold it like this, you'll find that's the longest edge. So you can really make that span. And here's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to draw one long continuous line. And we've done this before. This is nothing new, and it looks like this. It's going to go from here to here. Check it out. Just like that. Now if you remember, on the ends, we put very, very small little arrowheads. Very small and subtle. We don't want anything that draws our attention to these big, massive arrowheads, because that's not the focus. The focus is your beautiful drawing. Okay, so put a little arrowhead there. Put a little arrowhead here. And here is probably the best way to accurately measure and record a dimension. Someone might say, well, can't you just do this? Can't you just measure from here to here? Yeah, I could. Question is, did you draw these two lines perfectly vertical? I don't know. So here's what I recommend you do. Take your ruler, do what we did earlier in the period. Line up your 0 here on your metric ruler. Place this along the bottom of your car body and just find that measurement. My car body which is also where my front airfoil ends, my car is exactly 190. I had one kid say, hey, my car is 188.5. Should I write down 188.5? Yes, write down 188.5. Okay? So mine is actually a true 190 car. It's right on the 190 mark. So I'm going to write 190 M. Okay? And try not to make your numbers too big. They should be no taller than the grid space. All right? Okay? Now, let's do a second dimension. This is going to be the height of my car, so let's jump over here. Okay, let me show you the example. Look at this space I'm leaving. Leaving a space here. I'm leaving a space here. Look, I'm measuring to the highest point of my car body. Now, if you have a spoiler up here connected to the top of your car, I don't want you to include that with this measurement. I just want to know where's the highest part of your car body. Okay? So for a car like this, even though there's a spoiler here, I want you to do this. You're going to put a short little line here. And a student asked me, how far out should I extend these lines? Well, I would say they should probably be at least 2 grid spaces away. You don't want to put a measurement too close to your drawing. It starts to get a little crowded. And then I'm going to draw another line here. And remember, I'm measuring to the top of the car body, not to the top of the spoiler. Top of the car body in my case. Okay, so remember, leave a little gap. Leave a little gap here. You draw a nice, perfectly vertical line. Same thing we did earlier. If I keep my triangle aligned with this black line here, like I'm doing right now, and I can draw a true vertical line. Okay, just like that. All right, and then we draw very small, very subtle arrowheads. Just like that. Okay? Now, we had this question earlier. A car drawn like mine would have an overall height of what? 40, right. And here's how I know that. Well, obvious is I pick up a ruler. If I measure from the lowest point of my car body to the highest point of my car body, don't include the spoiler, I get 40 millimeters or 4 centimeters. Okay, so I'm going to take my paper, I'm just going to rotate it. Okay, 40 mm. There it is. Okay, this is the height of your car body. Now, the last one I'm going to do, the last two, they're not complicated. It's just more about location, location, location. So let me show you what the last two look like. Okay, so we've done overall car body length, overall body height. Now look at these last two. If you see the word front view in your paper, which I'm sure you all do, we're going to put this measurement here just on top of it. There should be a grid line that we can follow. This number here represents the distance from the back of the car to the front axle. That's what this number means. It's how far is this axle hole from the back of your car body. Okay? We're going to do this one first. We're going to do this little guy last. Let's not worry about this one here. Let's just worry about this one. Now, same thing applies. Watch this. I'm going to start from this corner. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. I'm going to bring this line down, 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 and almost touch this black line. I'm going to fall a little short. Okay, so just kind of follow along. Looks something like this. Okay, on the bottom left-hand corner, remember, you can put your triangle right along this black line. You also have a grid, so you can also follow along with the grid. So when I draw this line, leave a gap here, come down and stop just short of hitting this title block. Okay, now this is very critical. Okay, if you haven't done it yet, you got to definitely do this. Okay, watch. Take your triangle, slide it over. Stop right on that mark you made, right on that point. But before I draw anything, I want to make sure the bottom of my triangle is right on that black line. There it is. It's all aligned. Just slide it right up to that point. I'm going to start here just below the car body. I'm going to stop just before I get to that. So I want you to take a close look at what I did here. Okay? So just below the car body, stop just below the title, just above the title block. And now you can see this grid line right here. I'm pointing to it. That grid line is going to help me draw this next line. It's going to look like this, folks. Just like this. Okay? And same as before, little arrowheads here. And little arrowheads here. Okay? Now, here's how I would accurately measure this. Same thing I kind of did with the car body. Rather than measure my dimensions, because they could be a little off, here's what I recommend you do. Take your ruler, line up 0 with the back of what we call the axle line, which is basically the back of the car. And just kind of follow this line I made, this dashed line. Follow it until you get to that front axle. And according to this, my front axle is 141.5. Yes. I'm going to write down 141.5. mm. You got it. Okay, that's all I'm going to do, folks. That little ½ millimeter, you may not think it's a big deal. It is a big deal. Okay? All right, we've got to be as precise as we can, especially when you only have a 3 millimeter gap between your wheels and your parts. Okay, every part of that millimeter counts. So remember, here's how I measured it. I measured from the back of the block all the way to the center of that wheel, where I should have a mark. Okay? So ladies and gents, here's my last dimension. This time, I'm going to do the rear wheel. And now that I have that first dimension I made for my axles, this one makes it a little bit easier. Okay, look at how I'm lining up my triangle, folks. My triangle is lined up right along that black line, right on that little dot there. And it's going to look like this. And look at where I stop. Stop just short of this dimension, just short. And that's why I kind of do that other one first. That way I know where to place this one. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay? Just like that. I do my arrows, keep them small and subtle. That's the key. Don't make them big and obnoxious. Okay, and like I did before, I measure. I'm going to measure from the back of the car to the center of that wheel, which should look like this. I'm going to measure from the back of the block. And you can see here, once again, I have a measurement that's not exact. It's 42.5, folks. So that's what I'm going to write, 42.5. Okay, there it is. Now, I'm realizing there's one little thing I forgot to have you do, and it's not a big deal, and I would have done this before I even dimensioned, but oh well, I forgot. Okay? What do we typically put in the center of a circle? What type of line? Center line. Oh well, forgot to tell you to do that. Okay? Out of 6 classes, this is the one I forgot. Alright, so 5 out of 6 ain't bad. Okay, watch this. I'm going to slide my tool up, and now that I have all these dimensions, I'm just going to do myself a favor. I'm going to make sure that I make a small little vertical line here and a small little vertical line here. We would have done this before, but it does no harm, no foul that we're doing it after. Okay, and I want you to put a nice center line in the middle of each wheel. So there's 1, and then here's going to be 2. Now remember, keep your triangle lined up on that black line. and then you give yourself a nice true vertical line. Okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions? Because I can tell you right now, we've completed our front view with lines drawn with a 30, 60, 90 triangle, French curve. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions. Line quality is sharp, nice and thin. That's a completed front view. Okay?